6, the final project. And we're going to do a little astronomy with this, and I'm going to let you, when I'm all done doing these lectures, talk about what you can do. There's going to be 4 different possibilities. You can watch the moon, you can pick a planet and watch that, you can pick the sun and watch what happens with that, or you can pick a galaxy or something much larger, stars, constellations, that kind of stuff. So the first one we're going to pick on is the moon, and it's the closest neighbor to us. It's an object, a celestial object out there in space, and there's a lot of misconceptions about the moon, a lot of things that people don't understand. First of all, the moon does not rotate around or revolve around the Earth. It revolves around the sun. Remember, gravity is created by a mass, and the sun is a huge mass, so it's the thing that pulls the moon around. The Earth deflects the moon. It falls into the Earth's dent, and it gets in, and it goes out. And so the orbit looks more like a skier slaloming around the Earth. Okay, so that's first misconception. The second one is that you get to see all the sides of the moon. Now, for you flat earthers, some of the people that think that the Earth is flat, you only see one side of the moon. And that's not because there's only one side. It's because it revolves and rotates at the same exact speed, 27 1/3 days it takes to do both. And as a result, as it revolves, it also rotates. So one rotation, 27 1/3 days, one revolution, or one cycle around the Earth, 27 1/3 days, and because of that, we only see one side of the moon. Second misconception. Third misconception is that you only see part of the moon because the Earth gets in the way of the sun. That's called a lunar eclipse. That's not true. Let's pretend that's the sun. And you are on Earth, and this is I guess that would be the moon. I'm not sure how you vision this. I guess this would be the moon, that would be the sun, and you guys would be the Earth. And as the Earth gets in the way of the moon, you see less and less and less of it. It's called a lunar eclipse. It happens in on a full moon phase, and it's when the Earth and sun and moon all align perfectly, and the Earth actually gets in the way of you seeing the moon. This happens over a couple hours, not a month. So why you see a certain piece has nothing to do with a lunar eclipse. I'm going to turn off my sun here a minute so you can see. So the other thing is why do you see the pieces? Well, it's the position. So if this is the sun, and the sun is much larger than the Earth and moon, and this was the moon, which is way bigger than it would be, and this was the Earth, a new moon phase is when the backside of the moon is lit away from the Earth, and this black part is what we see. We call that a new moon phase. Now, right before a new moon phase and right after, we have waxing and waning crescents. So, wax on, wane off. So this would be a waning crescent right before you get to a new moon. So you're just barely seeing a little sliver of the moon one night. The next night, it's gone. The next night, it's on again. And this would be a waxing crescent. Wane off, wax on. If I keep moving from this position of being in between, I'm the moon, the Earth, and the sun, I would be to the side. And from the Earth's vantage point, half of the disk that we see would be lit. So in this particular case, the side shining on the sun, we would see that half, and the other half would be dark. We call this a quarter moon phase. Now, if I keep going another week later, and these are like almost 8 days, 27 1/3 divided by 4 phases, this would be the new moon, or full moon phase. This is what we're just hit. So if you've been looking at the moon, it's been full. I think it was full last night or the night before. The sun comes, you'd think that the Earth would get in the way, right? And so we'd never see the moon, but the moon is actually above or below. we have a misconception of how this all works. The sun is enormous. If it was the size of a goalpost in a football field, 3 football fields away, there'd be this little steely marble, you know, and a little BB that's the moon, and they would be 3 football fields away. And sometimes the moon is above the Earth, sometimes it's below. They don't always line up. If they do, you get what we call a lunar eclipse. We talked about that earlier. So in this particular case, most of the time we see the whole face. We call that a full moon phase. If we go another 7 1/3 days, we get to the next quarter. We get to see the other quarter of the moon that actually faces us. So you can see the sun lights up from our vantage point here. A quarter of our, well, half of what we see, the other half would be dark. And then finally we get back to the face. Another 8 days later, roughly, would be the phase, and we'd be right back to the new moon phase. And in this particular case, if the new moon is in line with the Earth and it's coming across during the day, you can get a solar eclipse if everything's lined up. It doesn't happen as often because it's got to be a new moon phase, it's got to be in line, and it's got to go past your particular state. It's like the moon is very small compared to the Earth, so it's like a cloud going in the sky. Sometimes you're in the shade, sometimes you're not. On a really hot day when a little cloud blocks the sun from you, you understand. That's how that works. So the other part of this is that you have to understand there's a new moon, crescent phase, on and off. There's the quarter moons and the full moon, and then you're back to a new moon. This all happens 27 1/3 days. Last thing you need to know about a moon is it rises about 45 minutes later, or I think it might be 48, than it did the night before. It will always be late getting to wherever it's going to go. So sometimes a full moon phase could be in a different cycle. It's not going to always come up and go down on the same day every month. It does every 27 1/3 days, and it always just lags behind how fast the Earth is spinning. So we wake up, and yesterday the moon was there when we woke up, and today it's not, or vice versa when we go to bed. So the moon phases change, and when it rises and sets change. Now, what can you do with a project with the moon? Track it. I want you to track the moon. I want you to watch and notice that every week just went through a full moon. So a week from now, it's going to be a quarter moon. And a week from then, it's going to be a new moon. You won't even see it. And there will be a waxing and a waning crescent on either side of that new moon phase where you just see that little sliver. I want you to track it for a couple weeks and then identify this is what's going on. So that's the moon. It's our closest neighbor. Just some fun facts about the moon. Gravity is 1/6 that of the Earth. So do something with the moon. I'd actually like you to get out and look at it and watch it and notice how it changes so these things make sense to you.